Hello again. Welcome back to another edition of Sportsbook Confidential. My name's John Sullivan, and I'm coming to you live from the FingerLakes1.com studios in Seneca Falls, New York. And this little show here is to help you learn and grow as a sports bettor. And we're about halfway through our NFL preview, but I thought that I would take the time this week, especially since I'm here on a Thursday instead of a Friday, and talk about my favorite football league, the CFL. But also we're going to talk about college football today and NCAA championship odds. And it's a very different handicapping look, if you will. It's college football is very political, poll-driven. There's rankings throughout the season to determine who's actually going to get a shot at the national championship. It's still a 14 playoff. Eventually, it's going to become 8. But for now, it's a very exclusive club, and there's a limited amount of teams that really even have a shot at the championship. So we're going to look at some of the insiders and some of the outsiders. But the ones I list, I think, will have at least a chance to sniff the playoffs. But before we do that, let's do what we always do and update my bankroll. And we're moving in the right direction as we get closer to football. We did some soccer last week. Starting bankroll was $310. We had the LA Galaxy Portland draw plus 290. That was a loss. That was only a half a unit, minus $5 to the bankroll. And then we had the New England Revolution plus 205. That was a win. They're sitting atop the MLS standings right now. They've been a very solid bet for me over the last month. That's plus $21 to the bankroll. Minnesota United, even money. They lost. They drew. So minus $10 to the bankroll. And then we had the Philadelphia-Chicago draw, plus 300. That tied 1-1. So that was a half a unit we wagered. So that's plus $15 to the bankroll. And then finally we had the Nashville, plus 195. And they tied, so that's a loss for us. And that's minus $10 to the bankroll. But if you do the math, that's plus $11 to the bankroll, and that makes us $321. And if you divide by 30, as I always do, because I try to be selective in placing my bets, that's going to make our bet size $11 going forward into next week's wagers. And it's kind of interesting. We don't have a whole lot to wager on this week, so what I'm going to talk about first is my favorite summer football league, which is starting 2 months late, the Canadian Football League. And if you remember, during the pandemic last year, there was no CFL season. And then they teased that they were going to merge with the XFL, and then that never happened. And then they hemmed and hawed over whether or not to have a season this year. And they finally decided to do a 14-game season, which starts tonight. And they're going to have their championship in December, the Grey Cup, the oldest trophy in sports, in football, not in sports. And that's going to be in December in Hamilton. And with this league is massively driven by attendance. So knowing that they were not going to have attendance last year because of the pandemic, they decided to cancel the whole season. This year it's going to be different depending where you live in Canada. But they are going to have fans in attendance, and there have been massive roster changes throughout the league. A lot of guys were released from their contracts, with the exception of the guys that had the high money guaranteed contracts, like the quarterbacks and whatnot. Most of the other guys were free to go wherever they wanted. And it's interesting, most of the teams have had significant turnover, probably except Hamilton, that are the favorites to win the Grey Cup right now. And we'll talk a little bit more about them in a moment. But the funny thing to me is today's week 1. There's 4 games this week, 4 games next week. And we have the game tonight. And the other 3 games are scheduled for Friday and Saturday. There are no lines out anywhere for these games. And it's because the sports books do not know how to line these games, and they don't want to take a risk of getting beat on these games, so they are not posting any lines until the day of the game. And I will give you what I think the line should be on each game, and we'll just have to see how accurate I am. Of course, I'm not going to give you a pick on any one of these games. If I don't know what the line is, that would be ridiculous. However, the Tiger Cats and the Bombers, which is a rematch of the last Grey Cup game, which was won by the Blue Bombers, is tonight, I believe, at 8 o'clock. And the line has actually changed since I typed this up this morning. It is now Hamilton minus the Tiger Cats minus 2.5, and the over-under is 50. And I was going to say that in the beginning of the season, you expect the offenses to be out of sync. You expect the defenses to dominate early. I would go under here. You know, you're looking at about 45, 46 points. Now, Hamilton has tremendous special teams, so scoring one or two special teams touchdowns. Remember, there is no fair catch in the CFL. Everything has to be returned. Could lead you to go over. But when it comes to these two teams, if Hamilton is returning both of its quarterbacks, the majority of their skill players, including last season's most outstanding player, their MVP, Brandon Banks. There is one of their starting defensive stars, Ted Laurent, is not playing tonight. He's a defensive tackle. And on the other side of the ball, the Winnipeg, they have Zach Collaros, who they picked up late in the season when they won the Grey Cup, and he split time at quarterback, and now he's the number one guy. But he has been injured significantly, I think, in each of his last 3 CFL seasons. So I would be concerned about him staying healthy for the long run. I mean, he may survive tonight, but the onus is on him. If he goes down, they do not have a quality backup like they used to in Chris Streveler. He's gone. Also, a difference for Winnipeg is last season played when they won the Grey Cup. Paul LaPolice was the offensive coordinator, big part of why they won the Grey Cup. He is gone. He is now the coach of the Red Blacks. So they have a new offensive coordinator. It remains to be seen whether they will continue to be successful on the offensive side of the football. And another thing for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers is their running back, Andrew Harris, probably the premier running back in the league up till now for the last few years, is missing tonight's game. They have a solid backup. I don't think he's on the same level as Andrew Harris, but we'll see. We'll see if they can move the ball. This really favors, I think this matchup really favors Hamilton, and the fact that it went from 3.5 to 2.5 really makes me scratch my head. Now, it is a home game for Winnipeg, and they're raising their championship banner, and emotions will be high. One thing, I've watched a lot of CFL previews online this week. I didn't really find too many podcasts, but I watched a lot of video previews. And the one thing that nobody's talking about is the fact of the kicking game for all of these teams. The kickers have all moved around, and some of the best kickers are no longer in the CFL. So in tonight's matchup, we have the name for the Hamilton kicker escapes me, but it's Tyler Carpina for Winnipeg, and he used to kick for Saskatchewan, and he is okay from like 35 in, but you get to 45, 55, it's not automatic for him. So I think the kicking game may favor Hamilton here. The defense favors Hamilton here. The offense favors Hamilton here. I think it's a Hamilton minus 2.5 all day long. Now moving on to Friday, you have the BC Lions at the Rough Riders, and I have question mark, because there's no line for this game. What the line will probably be, I think, is going to be 6.5, minus 6.5 for Saskatchewan Rough Riders, plus 6.5 for the BC Lions. I think if you get 7, you really have to consider taking the Lions. It's going to be a sold-out game in Regina. That's the craziest atmosphere. It's the most popular CFL team is the Saskatchewan Rough Riders. I think BC has Rich Campbell as their coach. He used to be in Ottawa. He won a Grey Cup there. I finally feel like they have a decent coach, and they're going to be much improved this year. They're not going to be 3-15. You know, they're playing a 14-game season. I can see them being 9-5. 8-6. I can see them being a winning team. Saskatchewan, I think, has to be the favorite in the West. However, I think this could be a very close game. Chris Rainey is back in BC as the return specialist. Cody Fajardo is the quarterback for Saskatchewan, and their backup quarterback is Paxton Lynch that was in the NFL. They also have a lot of players returning. I feel like they're the team to look out for in the West. However, they played a lot of close games last year, and they didn't really blow that many teams away. And then we have the Argonauts at the Stampeders, and this is an interesting matchup to me because people are touting the Argonauts as a team that went out in free agency and bought a lot of players, and that may be the case, but they are still without an identity at quarterback, and they have Boris Beatty as their kicker, who has just a tremendous leg, but he's a head case, and he's had significant periods where he's missed regular kicks. And I would not want to rely on him. If you're going to try a 55 or 60 yarder to win the game, you'd probably want him on the field because he's got that kind of leg. But if he's going to kick a 35 yarder to win the game in a high pressure situation, he's missed a lot. So I'm a little worried about that. They have David Arbuckle, who is the quarterback, was the backup in Calgary, and now he's probably going to be the number one in Toronto. And then they have McLeod Bethel-Thompson as the other quarterback. They've got a controversy going. That's never good. On the Calgary side of things, you have Bo Levi Mitchell coming back from an elbow injury. When he's healthy, he's one of the best quarterbacks in the league. But people are starting to wonder if he can throw the deep ball anymore. We're going to have to wait and see. Their roster has gotten a lot more older, just aged. And I think Calgary's primed to take a step back. I think they win this game. I think the line on this game is going to be 9.5 or 10. You would need 14. I would need 14 to take Toronto in this game. Calgary is always tough at home, but I don't. It depends on how competitive Toronto decides to be. I don't have a lot of expectations for them in this game. And then late Saturday night, we have the Red Blacks at the Edmonton Elks, formerly known as the Edmonton football team, formerly known as the Edmonton Eskimos. Red Blacks, of course, have a new coach with Paul LaPolice. He's a CFL veteran. He will help with this team. They have Matt Nichols, who was formerly the number one quarterback in Winnipeg, and he's also had a fragile history. He's always been a good CFL quarterback, but never felt like he was the guy that could take you to a Grey Cup. It's definitely a rebuilding year in Ottawa. I don't expect them to compete for a playoff spot. The Elks actually could be, they're like my number two in the West. I feel like they're going to come out, assuming Trevor Harris, the quarterback, stays healthy. They have a lot of veteran skill players coming back. They have probably the best receiving core in the league, including Greg Ellingson and Darius Bowman, I believe. Somebody else, name's escaping me at the moment. They rival Hamilton. I would not be surprised to see a Hamilton-Edmonton final, Grey Cup final, but they do have to stay healthy. But they get a home game against a rebuilding Ottawa team. This game should be 12 and a half points. Edmonton favored at home. I would probably need over 14 to even think about taking Ottawa. But if it's 10 or less, I'm all over Edmonton here. Of course, I can't give you that pick. We don't know what the line is yet, but that's how I feel about this season. The best kickers, Justin Medlock, Hiram Hiralahu, have gone on to other leagues. They were in the NFL last year. I don't know if they're going to come back to the CFL. Players change all the time in this league. It's a fun, entertaining league. I'm very excited to see the game tonight. I hope you follow along with me. It's nice to have football back. It's just, since the Super Bowl, it seems like we've just not had a lot of excitement about sports, even with the Olympics going on. So let's talk about some other football and college football, which is starting in a few short weeks. And of course, I'm talking about Division I big-time college football, the FBS Championship, the Football Bowl subdivision. And of course, the championship is a 4-team playoff. And if you look at the odds, the championship odds, the three top teams in the championship odds, obviously you have Alabama at plus 250 to win it all. They're heavy favorites to just sweep the whole season. Clemson at plus 380. They lost their top running back, their top quarterback, and they just reload. You would think that they would be good. I don't know if they're going to be championship quality good. And then Ohio State plus 550. They lost Justin Fields. They only played 6 games last year. Can they stay undefeated in a full Big Ten schedule? I don't know. I don't know. They're the favorite, obviously, in the Big Ten. But once you get past those 3 teams, then you get into what I call the second tier. There's going to be 4 teams invited to this championship. Obviously, the winner of the ACC, the winner of the SEC, and the winner of the Big Ten are probably all going to be there. And then there's going to be one more team, and who's it going to be? Is it going to be Notre Dame? Is it going to be a team from one of these Power 5 conferences? It's almost impossible for a team that's outside the Power 5 to even sniff a championship bid. I think it's only happened once if you don't count Notre Dame. So I'm not even sure that that's happened. So until it goes to an 18 playoff, we're stuck looking at who from this small group of the elite conferences who's going to have a chance to be invited and to win a bid to the playoff. And let's start with the Big Ten. And I like actually maybe taking a team from the Big Ten here because, by the way, any team I don't list on this screen is 100 to 1 or more. So if you don't see a team you're looking for, that means they're listed at 100 to 1 or higher. Right, we got Wisconsin and Penn State both at 50 to 1, and they just happened to play each other in the beginning of the season this year. So one of those teams is going to be knocked out right away. But I have not looked at the schedules to see if either one of them gets to avoid Ohio State during the regular season. But that would be a big plus if they did. They would just have to play their way in. And if they got to the Big Ten championship, you could always hedge your championship future against the team they're playing in the championship. So possible hedging opportunity there. Michigan 80 to 1. You don't know if Jim Harbaugh can finally get over the hump and beat Ohio State. He may not, might not have the squad this year, but they'll certainly be up there in the polls until they start losing. And then let's move on to the ACC, and of course we got Clemson as the favorite. Then we have North Carolina at 40 to 1, Miami, Florida at 60 to 1. Miami's had a lot of off-the-field issues with their players. North Carolina has not been consistently good. I'm assuming that this is the year that maybe they can cruise to the ACC title game. I don't know if they play Clemson in the regular season, but I would hope that you would get maybe a little bit better, 50 or 60 to 1, before you drop any money on them. Moving along to the Big 12, we've got Oklahoma as the favorite in the Big 12, and if one of the Big 12 goes undefeated, it's very likely that they'll get that 4th bid. We have Iowa State at 30 to 1, and they always play a non-conference with Iowa. They play a very tough schedule. They just haven't been able to run through their schedule clean to get that championship bid. And then Texas at 50 to 1. And, Texas has been, of course, in the news lately for wanting to move over to the SEC. It's a big-time program, but they just haven't had the big-time talent in the last couple of years. I don't really know if it's worth 50 to 1 there. Just my opinion. Then the Pac-12, which I think is the sleeper in this whole scenario. Obviously, the Pac-12 is considered the weakest of the Power 5 conferences, but you've got Oregon, the favorite, at 40 to 1, and Washington at 80 to 1, and then everybody else is 100 to 1 or higher. If one of these teams could slip through undefeated, they're almost guaranteed a spot in the playoff rankings. And I do Oregon at 40 to 1. Boy, depending on their schedule, that could be a pretty easy road. I don't expect USC to be very competitive this year. I could be wrong. They're not expected to be competitive is what I'm saying. I like Oregon at 40 to 1. And then finally, the big boys, the SEC. We have Georgia at 6 to 1, They are obviously the second favorite behind Alabama. And we have Texas A&M at 35-1, Florida at 40-1, and LSU at 40-1. LSU intrigues me. I don't know if they're playing Alabama in the regular season this year, but if they get Alabama at home, I feel like LSU is going to take a step back up. They're not back to that elite passing level they were at when they won the national championship, but I feel like they are much better than they were last year. And I feel like that 40-1 on LSU might be a good value wager. I mean, to each their own. But of all the teams I've talked about here today, LSU and Oregon really strike me as the teams that are the best value if you want to wager on a team making the national championship playoffs and possibly winning it all. You know, just assuming they make the Final Four playoff, you can obviously hedge your wager out and lock in a profit or let it ride. And we all know how that went for me last year. I let it ride and I didn't win anything. So that's up to you when you get to that point. But this is a good time of year to look at everything before they get started. It's only going to be about 2 or 3 weeks away before we start seeing college football games. Very excited for it. I hope you are too. So we're going to wrap things up with this abbreviated episode, and I'm going to give you my pick, which is my only pick for this week. It's Hamilton Tiger Cats tonight, minus 2.5 at minus 110. I think this game goes under 51. If it's 50, if it's under, after when it gets down to like 49, I would stay away from the under. But you're expecting it to go under. There could be fireworks. We don't know, but I do like, if it's a close game, I like Hamilton to pull it out by 3 points. So giving me minus 2.5, I will take that. Hopefully there will be some other lines out so we can bet on the rest of the games this weekend, and maybe you'll see me over at the local sportsbook placing my wagers. Come up and say hello. Thank you for spending time with me this week. We'll be back next Friday, week from tomorrow, with another NFL preview as we march towards the NFL season. So let me play the outro music for you, and let's go get some winners. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in, and let's go get some winners. Outro music.